Hey everyone, thanks for joining. We got a new room, new presenters, hopefully the same value you're used to from our webinar series. As Synergy Technical has grown over the last 11 plus years now, we've adjusted to what we hear from our clients and your strategic initiatives. And one of the practices we wanted to highlight today was our licensing advisory services. And this is a team we started over 7 years ago. And this is part of, it's no more prevalent than today with the macroeconomic trends that we're seeing and hearing from our clients to understand that, your IT spend is probably not fully dedicated to professional services, right? There's a licensing component to that, oftentimes bigger than your professional services and the vendors that you use is that licensing component. So how do we make sure that you're strategically aligning your business initiatives, optimizing your spend, and making the most value out of licensing? I have the man, the myth, the legend here with me today. Don Lewis is our Director of Software Asset Management and leads team licensing. Don, welcome to the webinar series.
Great intro, thanks.
This is essentially part 2 of a fireside chat. There's no fire here today, but we wanted to make it conversational.
Good thing it's kind of warm in this room.
Yeah, Don's got some great stories to tell about the opportunities that we see with our partners and our clients in the licensing space. Don, why don't you give us a little background of how you ended up on team licensing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think about it sometimes. Back in, I guess it was 07, 08, the economy had taken a bit of a downturn at the time and had been for, I think, 12, 13 years, a job cost accounting consultant. So I helped construction companies move their, a lot of times QuickBooks or their old accounting software to a new version, right? And as a consultant, you learn to ask the 7 whys. Quite honestly. Well, about that time, the economy took a turn. Contractors couldn't pay their truck payments, much less buy new software. So I thought, hey, what a great opportunity to kind of switch gears. And I was able to get an interview with the company. And I remember they flew me up to present my 30, 90 or 30, 60, 90-day plan that they had asked me to put together. And I put a lot of effort. I was ready for it. I was just going to nail this interview. And they put me in this little room when I got there and put a quiz in front of me, basically, and said, list out the 11 components of an enterprise cow.
Core cow, e-cow.
I was like, well, there's 11. I know that. And I listed the Windows Server cow and a couple of others, but I thought there's just no way I'm doing this job, right? I did. I got the offer. They must have been really, really needy at the time. You and I have a similar history in that, but I was really fortunate to have a great inside sales guy. And he taught me a tremendous amount about licensing. And it was just listening call after call after call. And during that role, I realized that for me, I'm kind of a jack of all trades, master of none, but I like to be really good at something, right?
Sure.
And what I realized is that there are very few modern businesses that run their business without Microsoft technology.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to be a specialist in something, let me do it in Microsoft, right? So that's kind of how we got here.
How does one become a specialist? Is it tribal knowledge, school of hard knocks, or are there actual exams, certs out there for it?
Yes. All of the above. There's some fairly rigorous certifications. We require our team to have CSAM, which is Certified Software Asset Management. Okay. It's a rigorous exam and certification. It's a 2-day class, and I think it's a 4-hour open book, 100 question exam.
Jeez.
So
4-hour exam since the SATs. So.
Yeah, and you know about open book tests. If they let you look the answers up, they've got a pretty tough test.
You ain't finding it. Yeah.
No, absolutely. So it's that, just fundamentals of asset management, but then there's product specific stuff around the Microsoft stack that we try to make sure every team member has.
Sure. And let's jump straight into what the attendees here today are really thinking, right? So when a licensing conversation comes up, we often get maybe some eye rolls, maybe a little grumbling, maybe a little dissatisfaction with the idea they got to understand licensing for the
glaze is a term I hear a lot.
Glaze it over eyes, right? But it really shouldn't be looked at that way, right? Like how does your team help as part of the overall Synergy Technical account management approach create a proactive strategy where it actually aligns with business initiatives and can be seen as positive?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with listening, quite honestly. And again, it's the consultant background in me that I've got to ask all these questions. A very firm understanding of a company's business structure, challenges, needs, et cetera. allow us to apply not only today's licensing, right, but communicate the impact of future licensing changes to those customers. And that's huge. You know, a customer that's about to make a huge investment in a certain technology, knowing that that licensing model is going to change a couple months from now, that's really key information.
Mhm.
So
I think of a few things like seasonality of employees even, right? Or are we
yeah, that's a
buying
great
Are
example.
we buying a big old bundle to roll out one technology? You know, those kind of opportunities. I'm on the other end of those calls, or the end of the call with you, right? But hearing your
Mhm.
team speak about, you know, how do we optimize, you know, what you're actually needing to procure here, but aligning it with what you're going to be doing 12, 24, the way contracts are written out 36 months down the road.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. You know, seasonality for some businesses is critical. I think about accounting, right? You know, from December to April, they've got a huge influx of staffers that are coming in. Well, you can use the certain agreement types to allow you to get those as monthly licenses, right? Pay a little bit of a premium for those.
Yeah.
But now I'm only paying for 3 or 4 months instead of an entire year. That's huge savings.
Yep.
So a lot of times when customers request licenses, we'll simply ask them, do you want these long-term or short-term licenses?
Right. I think there's a specific scenario, you know, when you have that seasonality, right? I've literally heard you, and again, Don is a consultant, me as the sales guy, right? Sometimes Don will say, don't buy that, or don't buy that now.
I know you cringe when I do that, right?
Take my shoe off and throw it at him, right?
Virtual meetings.
That's part of the value add of this team, right? Maybe you do have that seasonality, and there's advantages to starting a contract right after that season ends. You know, then there's an opportunity to add licensing under an annual structure at a regular rate, or a lower structure, a lower rate than monthly if your end date was co-term to 6 months out from your seasonality, right? And without asking those questions up front and understanding the business as a whole and where they're heading, we wouldn't be able to apply that logic to a license. If you say you need quantity 100, here's a quantity 100.
Yeah. I'm gonna share this little story. It wasn't in our prep, but I'm gonna share this story because it really defines who I am as a consultant. When I was selling or going on job cost accounting demos with the sales guys, we had just got a purchasing and inventory module, right? And this sales guy was teaching me some stuff. He took me on this demo with his general contractor. And we went in the conference room, the owner sat there, and he did the best purchasing inventory demo I'd ever seen. Absolutely wonderful. And he looked at the owner of the company and said, what'd you think of that? He said, that was fabulous. It's a shame we don't issue purchase orders. You get my point, I think.
Yep, I do. So tough pivot, but we're going to go from the bright side of licensing and how team licensing can play hero. There's also some complexities to it. And this is where I think we get the audience being like, yeah, let's talk about those. Give us some scenarios where it's fun. Where do you really get to stand out with fun licensing scenarios?
That's a great question. The modern day one is hybrid use benefits. Right.
You be?
Yeah. A lot of our customers have data centers, right? Physical data centers, and they've been licensing perpetual Windows Server, core infrastructure suite, whatever it is, for years. And they're trying to figure out how do I move these workloads? I want to move to the cloud, right? But I don't want to lose the equity. So Microsoft is, hybrid use benefits, but there's a bit of a calculation and how you assign those. So we work through those with customers. Core-based licensing is always a fan favorite.
No,
right?
server cap. No, it's per product. Oh, it's per core?
That's right.
Well, I have 4 cores. Why is it quantity 2?
The story of SQL. Absolutely. Absolutely. SQL is it's a very powerful product. The licensing model has so many options that you can get yourself in a tough situation pretty quickly. We had one customer that brought us in to try and help them get out of a situation they were in. Unfortunately, what they had done is they had purchased SQL, great, and they had deployed SQL in such a way that it was on one of their physical hosts in their 3-box cluster. But they had not limited the load balancing movement of that particular, the VMs, the SQL VMs.
See where this is going.
They were unfortunately audited, and through the assessment, they were found that they were about $200,000.
SQL can stack up pretty quick.
Yeah, very quick, especially in a virtualized environment. So virtualization allows us to spin things up very quickly, but we can get ourselves in trouble pretty quickly too.
So that really is the value of proactively reaching out to the licensing team, right? There's few areas in life where it's complicated and they don't want to talk to you, but you should proactively be reaching out and having that conversation, right? It's almost like going to your annual doctor appointment. It's like, let's do that checkup and make sure we're not going to get caught with something on the later, that we weren't projecting. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
it reminds me of this is going to be the nerd in me showing up a little bit, but I Googled this to make sure it was a fact. Actually, I used ChatGPT to make sure it was a fact. But random fact, the Chinese symbol for crisis, I do have this in my notes to make sure I got it right. The Chinese symbol for crisis is actually two symbols. And the first one is for danger. So hopefully we're avoiding danger territory in licensing by involving team licensing and using the advisory practices. But the second symbol for crisis is opportunity. So with that said, how do we avoid danger and find opportunities in the complexity of licensing?
It's a great question. I make the analogy of checking the sofa for change.
Couch
Right?
cushion
Yeah,
money.
couch money. And with new customers, I tend to find fold money. Not jingle, it folds.
Any crypto?
No crypto yet. I'm keeping. But what we find is that a lot of times customers have a legacy mentality that came from the device-based licensing days, right? We don't lay off devices. Devices don't decide to go to another company and work, right? Right. So our back in the perpetual licensing days, the offboarding wasn't as critical, right? You had a PC inventory, that's what you licensed to. Well, today it's more dynamic, it's more fluid, and you want to have agreements that allow you to take advantage of that, right? And don't force you to pay for things that you don't need.
Mm-hmm.
And more importantly, don't cause you to pay more for things that you do use on a regular basis. Sometimes customers misunderstand the requirements around, for instance, data retention.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say someone leaves the organization, they want to keep that mail, right? That OneDrive resident.
Keep an E5 on it, right?
That's right. Keep an E5 on it. That's a great point. Where in a lot of cases, they don't need any licensing. Right. We have some best practices that we advise our customers around. There are scenarios where you do want to keep licensing on it, but certainly not the most expensive SKU.
Yeah. And I think that's where oftentimes I have this conversation with clients of, the ever optimistic person that I am is, yes, it is complex, but if you want to take the Microsoft stance behind, this scenario and example, they've created flexibility, right? So I don't think any, IT organization should understand how to license each specific vendor or application that they have on their desktops, but to have someone and a team that is specialized and certified in this field and to reach out to them and understand, they understand the differences and by asking questions about your business can apply and treat it like their own environment, right? That's ultimately the goal of the entire Synergy technical team is to treat your environment like ours and guide you down the path to the right decision. So asking all those questions up front really makes a difference. I think.
Well, one of the things the analogy I would make is things that we don't do very often, we dread when we have to do them.
Sure.
Right. I think dentist, we go twice a year, right? For our cleaning.
You go twice a year.
Yeah. So I would ask our customers to just remember, we do it every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not like we're superheroes or anything. We're just very well practiced at it and we do it. That's our job. Whereas customers do it once a year if they're lucky. And they have a tendency to do one of two things. Just throw a broad brush at it. I don't have time to get in the weeds on it, so I'm going to spend more money than I need to.
Too much overhead.
That's absolutely right. Or we're just going to do what we had last year. That's fine.
Right.
Both have
those counts feel right.
Yeah, both have pros and cons to that approach. But customers like that, really, when we come in and talk with them about what's going on in the business and start drawing out the questions, they get more and more comfortable.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. So then they can just rely on us and they can worry about other things. They have plenty of things to worry about.
And I think some of the best journeys that I've seen clients go on with the licensing team would be ones where we do have a standard sync, whether it's monthly, quarterly, but it is a journey because at renewal time, we are talking quantities and SKUs, right? But beyond that, you can get into a certain level. You talked about hybrid use benefits. There's reserved instances. There's user profiles, right? Does everyone need the same SKU that the executive team is licensed for with their security concerns, their regulatory and retention concerns? your frontline workers need that same SKU, right? And understanding those differences, that can be a journey because you got to pull the audience, you got to understand the different groups, what kind of data they handle, what kind of device they have, literally how big their screen is.
They have three limitations.
Can make
That's
a
absolutely
difference
right.
on the SKU you're allowed to use is the amount of inches of your screen.
Yeah.
Who's supposed to know that? Team license.
That's a great point. In fact, this morning prepping for the call, I kind of come up with a new motto. I don't know if it'll stick or not, but be granular, right? You don't have to. The bundle was the big buzzword for a while, right? We bundled our cable and our telephone and all that together. Well, that's great. It's convenient. It's not cost effective. Being granular with your approach to a user's licensing based on their roles and needs is a lot more efficient, but it requires administrative burden.
It does.
It really does. And what we found is customers know that they recognize the benefit. Where we help is pushing them to get it done,
Moving it forward.
Yeah. And I've seen it happen. They oh yeah, this is absolutely wonderful. We're going to get that done. The next month saying, no, I just didn't get to that this time. We keep pestering him.
Well, who assigns a project manager to a license renewal?
Yeah.
Right. And there's tasks behind the renewal. If we're going to do this right and actually optimize. And it kind of reminds me of, we're talking a lot of Microsoft here, but that is a majority of IT business spend often in the licensing category. But their campaign this year to kick off 2023 is do more with less. So what are we hearing a lot from our clients? I got to shrink my budget. I got to review everything. So be granular. I like it. Let's work with this. Be granular. Hashtag be granular. Everyone spread it on.
I guess I should start tweeting. Huh?
Yeah. But what are some other ways to be granular?
You know, what I try to tell our team is don't just take orders. Look at their request. What are they asking for? And does it make sense in the context of their business and licensing?
Right.
Great example. Here's an example. This just happened, I think it was last week. Customer sent in a request to add some Power BI Pro licensing.
Mm-hmm.
First time they'd added Power BI Pro licensing, took a look at it, look at the rest of their stack. They've got about 200 Office 365 E5 licenses. Well, we know Power BI is included in that, right? We're good. And so we reached back out to the customer and said, hey, how many of these are potentially E5 users? Well, 3 of them happen to be. And they were able to save a little bit of money. We don't just take orders.
Yeah.
Again, we try to advise our clients, and more times than not, it involves them spending less money with us.
Yeah. Yeah.
But over time, I think our customers appreciate that.
Well, I think another way to do that, on top of the review, is it a 200-seat organization adding 10 Power BI? Maybe that needs some criticality. Is it a 2,000-seat organization adding Power BI, and they don't have E5? That makes sense. That's transactional. We'll handle that for you in record timing. The thing we're not calling when this team responds in 20 minutes, they're mad about it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Response time is one of my key KPIs. Always has been.
But the other thing, these renewal conversations, these anniversary conversations, these strategic conversations call out are the complexities, let's be honest, of the bundles and the SKUs that you have in your environment.
Yeah.
So the focus on this space, I have seen so many times play out that maybe you are finding a project. There's the win for synergy at the end of the day, right? We're saving them on the licensing front, but we've actually identified, hey, you're using this tool for AP, this tool for device management. You already own that solution. Let's take a look at it, do a quick proof of concept and just see if it's worth it, because you're paying for the license, right? I have this conversation at least 2 to 3 times a day. I think that honestly is what the do more with less campaign is all about, is expanding that bundle and understanding each technology within there and making sure you're making the most out of it. And oftentimes it is the right solution for the organization. They just didn't know they owned it already, so they went and bought a third-party solution.
Yeah, we've developed some tools, a lot with your help, to put in front of the customer and be real thoughtful about gathering that information. What are you using for this? And we list out the stack, right, that they own.
Right.
And if you're doing something else here, what are you paying? When are the anniversary dates? Do you love it? Right.
Right.
We know Microsoft is great at all things, but we understand that customers use third-party apps, right? Sometimes what I've found over the last 3 or 4 years, Microsoft has really moved to the magic quadrant on a lot of the security stack, and that's where a lot of the third-party reliance was.
Yep.
So what we're seeing in those customers that we've already searched the couch, right? We've got the quantities right. We're looking at some of those other ways to move the needle.
Yep. I just had that conversation. Customer has, all these siloed security solutions with an E3 SKU. let's talk about what we can do. You can pull out an easy 200K in security spend that you're already licensed through a bundle, and let's unpack that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
To throw some hard data points behind that, I'm always with my econ degree. I want to throw numbers out there too. If a certain particular customer is on the line, it's a great case study we have that's not public, so I'm not naming anyone, but as part of this, we have a client who has spent 2.5 years on the licensing journey with the licensing team, and you've been the face of this conversation with that team. We came into a scenario where it was a big package deal. There was not granularity. We were not being granular, and so we were pulled in, and we had a chance to really understand the business model, where the business was heading, what the technologies they were using, the number of entities in a dynamic SKU, and whether that meant pro or enterprise. And over a 2-year span, right? So this wasn't immediate, but over a 2-year span, we've recognized over 1.5 million in savings in user license. And that would have just been spent. That would have just been spend that was assumed it was the cost of doing business with this vendor, right? And instead, it was conversations with the licensing team, a little bit of project work, doing some user profiles. But 1.5 million, I think, is worth it, right?
Absolutely.
And when we talk hybrid use benefits, I remember their ROI on procuring old school licensing to turn off that consumption cost in Azure was 2.5 months.
Yeah.
When I heard that number, I was blown away by that number. There's not many projects out there with a 2.5 month ROI.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That was a great case, but it took some pushing.
Yeah.
I mean, they were a classic case of, they knew there was water there and it was good. They just couldn't make it a priority.
It takes a lot of hands to get
it does. But now that they have, and the next step of automating that for them, that's going to be exciting.
Right.
I look forward to that project.
The automation part, we have another client story there. They've actually automated based on an alert that you get when you license dynamically by groups.
Yeah.
They've automated, if they see that alert, email automatically kicks off to the licensing team, and they can remedy the difference.
Yeah. It's again, it's administration. It's why companies paint with the broad brush, because it's easy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, these days, somebody wants more than easy. They want budget. So
come to licensing to understand it's not E5 across the board. It's not 3-year agreements across the board, and be granular.
Absolutely. Be granular. 2023, be granular.
Is that the walking away message from team licensing?
I just think, don't just have someone, if it's not us, have someone like us look at it, right? There are some great resellers out there. There are some that just take orders. Don't just place an order.
Yeah.
Know what you're ordering, know why you're ordering it, and know that it benefits your company. And if you're not sure of that, get someone like us that can help you make sure that you're getting what you need.
So you guys are happy to talk licensing.
Always happy to talk licensing. Licensing is the kind of gets picked on a little bit. I'm starting to feel self-confident.
Don is not a self-confident man.
not at all.
You heard it here first. This team is always happy to talk licensing.
Always happy to talk licensing.
Hopefully we've given you a few ideas here today that help you understand there can be a real strategic conversation around this and a value add to licensing. It doesn't just need to be a line in your budget. There can be value add, and we can help optimize that spend with Synergy Technical's license advisory practice.
Yeah, give us a call. Just tell us how it's going. Tell us how we can help, and look forward to talking with you.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.